Hello, everyone. I'm happy to just be sharing the space with you. This is my first time I'm a part of like the MNT space. I'm affiliated with the MNT EC Center at Pasadena City College with Jared, and so I'm happy to just sort of dive into some of the things we're going to be doing. We don't have a lot of time, so I tried to condense sort of like STEM education sort of pitch into a few slides. So we'll work through as much as possible, and then I'm available, obviously, if anyone wants to follow up with me about anything we talked about. So, um, looking at equity in STEM education, one of the first things we have to look at is how our sort of current system is structured. And what it typically looks like is we have the K-12 and post-secondary ed people, we have workforce development, and then we have sort of diversity and inclusion initiatives that are working somewhat together, not always a lot of coordination. And then all those things are supposed to come together and get us to some better place, right? And the reason I sort of I purposely used a vague and amorphous term, a better place, because there's not a sort of shared vision on what that means, right? Does it mean that we're bolstering our research and development? Does it mean that we are, bolstering our education system? There's not really clear vision and leadership. And so I'm sort of proposing that we move in the direction of sort of having these pieces that are a part of the same structure, but just different pieces of the same structure, so that it's clear all these things should be playing and working together at the same time. And so we have K-12 education, higher education, diversity and inclusion efforts, workforce. And one of the key ingredients that's missing from the prior diagram is this idea that we need clear leadership and research and data, because a lot of times we as STEM educators, faculty get in rooms and talk to each other, but we're not all talking about the same thing. You may say diversity in STEM to one person, and they think you're talking about women in STEM efforts. You may say diversity in STEM to another person. They feel like you're talking about LGBTQ efforts. This presentation today will focus on sort of the sex and the sort of state of STEM education as it pertains to racial, ethnic minorities and gender, along gender lines. So just as an overview, of the 1.8 million bachelor's degrees awarded in 15-16, less than 1/5 of those, so 18%, were in STEM fields. And I'd like to sort of just start with this overview to show that although there's a high production in post-secondary degrees, we really have a lot of work to do when it comes to producing in STEM fields. Now how does that break down along racial and gender lines? So if we look at this graph, and I'll just give everyone a second to take this in, what this is showing us is that of the, this is first of all showing us what was just on the previous slide, that of the 1.8 million bachelor degrees, 18% of them were in STEM fields. But you'll notice that there are stark differences along racial lines, right? So it shows that the proportion of bachelor degrees that went to Asian students, 33% of them were in STEM degrees. That's almost double what the proportion of total degrees is. And so we should not look at this as that, there is not work to be done in Asian communities, because there are subsets of students like in Hmong and Vietnamese communities that are not STEM high flyers. And so you'll notice that Black students are actually receiving the least sort of favorable outcomes in this scenario. Moving on to sort of STEM bachelor's degree production on race and sex, you'll notice that one of the things I want to take away from this slide is that when it comes to total bachelor's degrees, women are actually outnumbering men in terms of production. But the very next column shows that when it comes to STEM degrees, women are actually lagging behind men. Also, I think it's important that we come from the same point in terms of language and terminology. And so I want to sort of stress that one of the working definitions I've been working on is that equity is not just parity in opportunity, but parity in outcome. So it's not just about creating opportunity, but it's making sure the systems and supports are in place to actually produce those favorable outcomes. There's been a number of reports and academic journals that come out over the years about barriers to STEM success. Those things are, the list is long, but they really can be grouped into these pieces that you see here. And so we have, culture relevant curricula, unresponsive teaching, deficit versus asset-based, stereotype threat. These are all of the things we've known that would go against STEM success. And then lastly, I want to just leave this up here because these are some of the resources I have consulted to learn more about the diversity in STEM, and I wanted to share that with you so that you have what's available to you um, to do your own learning and visioning. So that's it.